Hi, I'm Alex Powell. I had a problem. That's not the right slide. I had a problem. I love engineering. I love building things. I love testing things and sometimes breaking things. But I also found it incredibly frustrating. At work, our team was constantly under pressure. We were constantly in conflict with program managers as we just weren't meeting our deadlines. Now, this pressure was slightly different for us. See, lives were at stake. Martin Baker is the leading manufacturer and designer of escape systems. To date, we have saved 7,646 lives. As you can imagine, if anything goes wrong, it's on us. Now, whilst this pressure was different, it was at odds with other areas of my life. Competing internationally in karate got me used to pressure. Walking out onto a mat as the last fighter, there was a medal on the line, the floodlights were bearing down on you, and everyone in the stadium was watching you. That was a lot of pressure. But it almost never got to me. See, in karate, we had a strong foundation of discipline. We were always put under pressure, and we were always striving to improve. It was a lifelong journey to get better. So why couldn't it be the same in my professional life? I had all the building blocks around me. I was surrounded by a team of highly talented engineers who were willing to put the work in. We were just missing something. We were missing our way, our path. We were so swamped with firefighting that we just couldn't get any time to improve. It was suffocating. Now, luckily, we found our way out of it, and we got there in the end, but it wasn't without some ups and downs. So this talk is about data. And what is data? Well, data is a really far-reaching topic. It can cover anything. It can be the number of steps you walked today, the calories you burnt last week, or it can be the amount of times you have annoyed your partner by not unloading the dishwasher. Yeah, we started keeping a logbook for that. As we all know from those wonderful little cookie pop-ups, companies around the world want to harvest your data. Why is that? Well, see, data is powerful. These companies want to use this data to build an image of you. They want to make a reality of you so they can predict what you'll want to buy, so they can sell more products to you. Now, this is great for them. It improves their profit margins. What could we do the same? Is there some way we could harvest our own data to help improve ourselves? See, the joy of this is data allows you to confront your reality. It's hard to make the data about yourself lie. Yes, you can skew it or you can record it inaccurately, but at the end of the day, you're only cheating yourself. So why would you do that? When you use data to empower yourself, it becomes one of the best enablers. So, the data I'm using to improve my life must be really complicated. It must be, I must have to track 1,000,001 things, and I must have to do some really difficult data analysis on it. Well, not really. The data I would advise using is actually quite simple. It's something we track all the time. It's your time. Or to put it more specifically, how long you spend on a task versus how long you actually did, versus how long you plan to spend. Think about it. How often do you hear program managers complaining that projects are behind or tasks are taking longer than expected? This is a universal symptom around the world. How is this? How can this be the case? So owning your data is the first step to fixing this absolutely chronic problem. So where was I when I started all this? Well, I knew projects were off track, but it was mostly based on a gut feel. Anytime we had a review meeting and I got asked how long something was going to take, it was a guess. It was taken from my gut feel. Whilst this was okay and it got us somewhere, I was quite often blown off course. It could be a sudden defect, it could be a requirements change, or it could just be I got the wrong value. I was out of control. And this is a really horrible place to be in. I didn't know where to start. I had no experience about planning or estimating. The only experience I had was my final year project team, and we ended up pulling a lot of all-nighters for that. This is where I got incredibly lucky, and my boss, Rob, introduced me to PSP, the process dashboard, and the wonderful world of data analytics. So let's see this in action. I've got a story for you about how data helped me to improve my professional life. So by this point, I had been on what's known as the Exception Engineer course for about 6 months. This is a course run by Alan Willett, which focuses on a variety of aspects for how you can become a better engineer. But one of the key areas is your commitment, how you make sure you do the tasks you say you do in the time you said you'll do it. So this project was myself and some of my other team members. At this point, this project had been slipping for about a year. So when we got assigned to it, we did what every good engineer did. We analyzed the workload, we found the areas we thought would be a problem, we made a plan, and we made a commitment to our stakeholders for when we could deliver it by. And for the first few weeks, this was going great. We were completing tasks, we were fixing problems in the underlying system or the technical debt of the system, and we were in constant communication with our shareholders. Everyone was happy, but something didn't quite feel right. It felt like something was missing somewhere. So I did what everyone would do. I started looking at my data, and I started looking at what is a really simple metric. It's known as your cost performance index. It's effectively how your ratio of your plan time to your actual time, or how close are you to being perfect at your estimates. So looking at this told me the story. At the start of the project, we were having a tendency to underestimate. We were completing our tasks faster than we said we would. As we were starting to go through, we were starting to get slower. Everything was starting to tend towards an overestimate. Now, this actually makes a lot of sense when you consider the way we planned the project. As this was a new area, we started on the work that seemed the easiest. We started on the simplest tasks. This was to get the team used to the system and to help us find any areas that were going to be the real challenge. Obviously, we increased the time we were going to spend on the latter, more difficult tasks, but the data was telling me what reality was. It wasn't enough. We were going to be late. This is what's known as a watermelon project. It looks green on the outside, but in reality, it's red. It's in danger. So obviously, this was a high-profile project at the time, and it was a bit disheartening to see that we were going to be late. It was a bit of a gut punch. Luckily, I'd hit this problem a few times before. I think the first time I hit it was when I actually saw a graph like this. Now, for anyone who has done this sort of data analytics, this graph tells you a pretty horrible story. It tells you you're only achieving 40% of the work you said you would. Now, I'm quite a competitive person, and I like to think I was achieving high things. I was delivering great value to the business. This, however, showed me what reality was, and I wasn't delivering anywhere near what I thought. And that was horrible. That took me through the 5 steps of the grieving cycle. The grieving cycle is the normal steps you experience whenever you find a setback in your life, or you struggle with something. So I started out with denial. I thought the tool was lying to me. I thought there's no way this could be me, and that something must be wrong somewhere else. I deliver value all the time. I'm brilliant. This can't be it. Anyway, after a bit of digging, I noticed that the tool wasn't wrong, and in fact, this was my actual performance. Then I got angry. Angry at myself for being such a poor engineer. And once that all simmered down, I got into depression. I realized that I wasn't achieving anywhere near what I thought, and that I was just going to be overwhelmed by all the work that was surrounding me. Now, this is where I'm really lucky that my colleagues at work are such exceptional engineers. It was easy to share my grievances with them and for them to start giving me ideas for how I could improve this and put me back on track. That led to obviously bargaining and acceptance, and I was better again. So why am I giving you this story about this? Well, it's to show that this is normal. This is a normal thing when you start owning your data. You'll find areas that you don't live up to how you think you're doing, and it will suck. So the sooner you get used to taking yourself through this journey, the better it'll be. And it's not just you. Every time you tell your shareholders that a project will be late or something is changing, they'll have this too. So the sooner you learn to take yourself through it, the sooner you can help take others through it as well. Anyway, back to the main story. As I said before, whenever I was asked for estimates, I always did it based on a guess. This time was different though. This time I had data. I could quite easily take the projected trend I'd seen and quickly come up with some new end dates. These end dates were what reality was going to be based on our current performance. It was correct. Following this, I could quickly renegotiate the deadline with our shareholders and make sure I got their input. I could find out if there were areas we could cut or if we were just going to have to accept this new end date. The key difference to all the previous times as well was I spotted this weeks in advance. I didn't slip a deadline a day at a time. I didn't surprise everyone with something suddenly being late. I gave them time. I gave them time for us to think about it. I gave them time to inform other teams. I gave everyone time to respond and find the best solution for the business. And there was no argument about this. Everyone was happy. I was actually surprised that I didn't get anger from the people I was presenting this to. And the good thing with this is this new schedule got delivered bang on time, and we managed to achieve what we set out to do. So this is my key takeaway from this story, is that when you have data, it's no longer an argument. People listen to what you have to say. People don't think you're either overselling or underselling what's happening. People can see the reality that's in front of them. So to wrap up the story, what's better now? Well, I still feel a gut punch whenever I see I'm not performing as I think I should. My shareholders are still depressed if something slips. But what's changed is my ability for all this. I can now track my project plans quickly and accurately and see when things are getting off track. I can make informed estimates based on all my past data and improve from then on. I'm making commitments I can keep to my shareholders. I'm in control. So this talk isn't just about me. This talk is about how I leveled up my whole life. So my partner Charlie is studying a PhD in genetics. This is some really fascinating research that deals with the interactions of ants and viruses and how they use this to gain resistance to bacterial diseases. Now, this is some truly important work, as there's a lot of potential applications for this, such as how we as humans can use it to combat antimicrobial resistance. That, and I'm also pretty sure Charlie would just tell you ants are fun. So her original plan was brilliant. It involved jet setting around the world, traveling to far exotic locations, collecting all different species of ants, and interacting with research institutes around the world. As we all know, COVID has had a bit of an impact on the world since then. Workplaces are closed, flights are cancelled, the world has ground to a halt. And that's exactly what happened to Charlie's plan. She wasn't able to go do anything she originally planned. And to make matters worse, the samples that she had spent months getting shipped from other labs to our labs died because nobody could look after them. Her whole PhD was thrown into disarray. This was a really stressful time for us. It was stressful for her. It was stressful for me. It was stressful for our lizard. So where did we go from here? Well, we started looking around for anywhere we could get help. And Charlie found something.
We are all laughing, Alex, just so you know. That was.
I'm glad everyone enjoyed my clip art. So where did we go from here? Well, we started looking around. We started to try and find help in any way we could. And Charlie found something. She found she could get a funding extension. But to get this extension, we had to prove the impact of COVID. We had to prove that these plan changes she was experiencing would just be insurmountable without this extension. Now, this wasn't the best thing to hear. Charlie had a plan originally, but it was rough, and a lot of it had changed since then already. It was full of big bucket hours that gave some semblance about what we knew was going on. How could we possibly use this to stand up in an argument? Luckily, this is where I suggested that we try what I'm doing at work. Why don't we take this estimating method I've learned and apply it to a PhD? Great. This would get us a detailed plan. This wasn't quite met with the enthusiasm I wanted. Charlie responded to that her PhD was far too complicated and couldn't be broken down like this, and that producing a plan like this would just take far too long. Luckily, I'd heard this all before, and I knew all I had to do was take Charlie on this journey. So if we refer to my good friend the grieving cycle, we can see Charlie is somewhere here between denial and anger. How do we get her out of this? Well, we start by just asking her a simple question. How can you see to break down the data? See, this instantly frames it as not something she should do because I'm telling her to do it. It's something she should do because she'll start to see the value in it. She'll start to see that it can really help her. And Charlie's response actually shocked me in it. She came back with that she could just break it down by chapter. So Charlie's PhD is broken down into 3 distinct chapters, each of which follow a similar cycle of analyze, results, and write-up. That's brilliant. I would have never come up with that. That's not how my brain works. See, this is the joys about Charlie owning her own data. It makes sense to her. It's in a structure that she can truly appreciate. I am just a lowly software engineer. She's the expert in genetics. Whilst I might understand something that's going on in her PhD, I'm lost for most of it. So we went on like this for a while, me asking the how and Charlie giving answers until we arrived. We had a semblance of a plan. Now all we had to do was put some hours into it. So we started this. We started going through. Charlie putting in some hours, me challenging them, Charlie doubling those hours, until there was one little task that struck out to me. One simple task. Write lit review. Now, a literature review is a relatively simple thing. You can break it down into some easy steps. Read papers. If papers are good, analyze papers. Summarize or analyze papers and write some coherent story that links them together. Simple. So I started asking Charlie how long she thinks it would take. Her response, oh, not long, probably a few hours. So I'm pretty sure I just felt any program manager in the room twitch at that response. As we all know, that response is basically just a guess made to try and convince ourselves that we can do the work in less time than we expect. And the actual amount of hours she put in, 10. That's great. 10 hours is quite a lot of time. Well, in the grand scheme of things, not really. I started digging deeper into this. I asked Charlie how long it would take her to read a single paper. 2 hours. That makes sense. That's great. 10 hours, we can read 4 papers and have some time left over to write up. Perfect. That sounds like it fits. Then I asked how many papers she was going to read. 50. So I don't know if this is too complex maths, but I think it's quite obvious to see what's happening here. 50 papers at 2 hours each is a bit of a far cry from our original 10-hour estimate. And this is just a little nugget of information I wanted to pass on to everyone, that proxy estimating is a great way to start to challenge your own assumptions about your estimates. It's a great way to fact check what you're saying and actually show you what reality is. And so I would really advise that try and find proxies wherever possible. These could be anything. It could be the amount of code you expect to write. It could be the amount of papers you're going to read. It's up to you. So we carried on like this and we eventually finished it. We had a plan. We knew when we were going to finish by. So Charlie's PhD was originally scoped to finish in December 2021. The extension would take us to April 2022. And this plan came in March 2023. Yeah, that was a bit of a slump into despair if I ever did see one. We just felt overwhelmed. There was absolutely no way we could get all this work done. This was going to take us a year, 2 years, more than we thought. However, could we get around this? But throughout all this, we actually realized one very important question. We didn't know how much we needed to do to deliver a PhD. We didn't know if we were doing too much work, too little work, or just the right amount. And this again is where Charlie owning her data really came through. So we did some thinking and Charlie realized she could present her schedule to her schedule review panel. They're the people who would know exactly how much she needed to do to get her PhD. And what shocked me from this presentation was just the level of engagement she got from them. They didn't spend hours trying to put together what Charlie's plan was in their head. They didn't see gigantic bucket numbers where you didn't really have a rationale for why you were spending 800 hours walking around a field. They could quite quickly and easily see the task breakdown and isolate where Charlie was spending all their hours. They could have a focused discussion. And this paid massive dividends. Multiple members of the panel were really helpful and engaging and really started to spot areas where Charlie was spending too much time. She could cut out her experiments from 3 to 1. She could test on a single species of ant rather than 5. And thanks to their concerted efforts, we got to acceptance. We found a new plan. We were bringing this in. This plan could now be completed in April. And that is kind of the key point from this, that Charlie showed them reality. Charlie's data showed us the reality originally, that we could have never got everything planned for her PhD done in time. And it showed her project schedule panel the reality about the work she was doing. This is just yet another reason why data can be so powerful in your hands. And needless to say, when she presented this to the funding review panel, there was no argument. And I'm happy to say she got the extension. But this hasn't stopped there. Charlie's still owning her data today. We're still using all of this to track her PhD project and start to spot where we're getting in trouble. We are in control of all of this. And that's the key takeaway from this, that this is your journey. It's your data. Other people can help you and guide you and offer you assistance, but you have to understand it. You have to own it. So, those two stories were about solving a problem. And I'm happy about the way I solved those. But what's better than solving a problem? Well, it's preventing it in the first place. That and helping others around you. And this is exactly what my cohort at work is doing. So by now, we've finished our exceptional engineer course, and we've achieved our goal. We know how bad we are. It is depressing after months of work to see that we're still achieving low numbers. But that's the key part. This is a lifelong journey. This is not something that will change overnight. We're in a much better place than where we were originally. We've quickly and easily identified the areas that are spending most of our time and how we can improve them. And better yet, we are presenting to upper management and identifying other areas of the organization that are struggling or need help. We are really pushing to make a change and impact in our organization. We're standing out. And that's not without its own separate set of struggles, but I'm surrounded by the right people to do it. Now, I'm going to share a little bit more about my passion here. So by now, I've been studying karate for somewhere in the region of 8 years. And if there's one thing I learned, it's martial arts are hard. They are a combination of strength, flexibility, coordination, reactions, mindset, memory, and frankly, just the grit to take being pounded into the ground on occasion. But that's why they're so good. It's a lifelong journey. You are constantly analyzing yourself in each of those areas to see where and how you can improve. And you're always pushing to be better. But it's not just you. Throughout all your time training, you're surrounded by people to help you. You have your teachers, your sensei, to watch you and help guide you with his years of experience. You're surrounded by your teammates, your senpais, all of who are happy for you to bounce ideas off or to point out different ways and that they think you can improve. And all of you are focused on your karate do or your karate way. And your way may be different to other people's. It'll overlap at times. It'll diverge at times. But that's what it is. It's your way, your journey to getting to be the karateka you want to be. And that's exactly what surrounds me in work. I've got each of these there. I've got my senseis. I've got Rob, my boss, who introduced me to this and still challenges me and pushes me to this day. I've got Alan, who took me through the exceptional engineer course and has helped mentor me for a lot of other things beyond that. I've got my senpais. I've got my peers. My cohort at work is constantly striving to improve, and we're all always looking at how we can push each other to be better. And finally, we have our do. We have our way. This is our journey as a team to really improve our standard of work and produce truly exceptional results. And that's what I wanted to say, that you're not alone in this journey. Whilst you are going on it yourself, you are influenced by all those around you, and you want to influence them. You want to reach out and touch and improve not just the people but all the things that surround you as well. And that's it. This is your journey. So, how can this apply to you? hopefully by now I've convinced you that owning your own data is important. But where can you start? Well, I would suggest just starting with something simple. Make a coherent plan and just put how long you expect to take on each task and track it. I honestly think you'll be surprised at the results from that. If you want to go a bit more in depth, I'd recommend you start using the tool Process Dashboard. This is a tool I use daily in my life and what I use to produce a lot of the snazzy charts you saw throughout the presentation. This is maintained by David Toomer, who's here today, and I really appreciate all the work and effort he puts into this. And there may be a bit of a learning curve with the software, but once you get there, you'll start to really notice the benefits. Next, I'd recommend the book, PSP, A Self-Improvement Process by Watts Humphreys. This is what I personally read when I started this, and I think it's a brilliant way to get solid foundations in not just estimating, but how to produce exceptional high-value work. And finally, I would recommend the Exceptional Engineer course run by Alan Willett. Now, this course is different to anything else I'd experienced. It wasn't just academic. It wasn't just book learning. It wasn't Alan coming in and just speaking to us week in, week out. What it actually was Alan and Julia coming and meeting with us, listening to our concerns, our problems, and helping to just guide us to be better. Honestly, I don't think I'd be anywhere near where I am today without this course. And as I saw someone mentioned in the chat, this is only a small part of your journey. Throughout this talk, I've only talked about how owning your data for commitment. But whilst I'll gloss over a lot of the information in this slide, there's many other areas you can focus on. You can focus on improving your quality, your value, and how you amplify your effect within the organization. But all of these are built on a foundation of commitment. And the only way to get there is to start owning your own data. So, in summary, where have I got to? Well, the difficulty of my work hasn't changed. The pressure I'm under hasn't changed. The business still wants more than it can, as much as it can get out of me. But what has changed is my response. I know what I can do. I know what my abilities are. I can quickly and easily reason with data, and I can use that to track all my work and see when things are getting into trouble and going off scope. I'm now able to make commitments I can keep. And that's my presentation. Any questions?
Alex, wow.
Outstanding presentation, Alex.
Thank you very much.
So, Alex, when Charlie was doing her plan and stuff, was she doing it in Process Dashboard? Is she using Dashboard to track her PhD data?
Yes, she is actually. We're still using that tool now. Oh, and that was one of the key points I forgot to mention, that to produce that plan that she presented to her schedule review panel only took us around 2 hours. It really didn't take too long to do together. And all that was us just bouncing ideas off each other until we got to something we were happy with.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's a very versatile tool you can apply to almost any situation.
Yeah, that's awesome. Other questions?
People can send questions via the chat window as well, or comments. Alex would appreciate comments as well. Go ahead, Julia.
Oh, no, just that I thought it was such an inspirational talk. I thought it was, I think like when you take it and you internalize it, you can't help, and a lot of us in this meeting will attest to this, you can't help but apply it to all aspects of your life. But the dishwasher log, now that's really creative.
That was more just to prevent arguments than anything else.
Other comments and questions?
So Alex, was it really that easy with the program managers once you had data? Did they experience the grieving cycle as well?
Wasn't that easy with the program managers? Well, at the start it was difficult. I think it was a very shocking experience for them as well when we first started presenting this data. This data can be quite a scary reality to see. So yes, they did experience the grieving cycle, and they experienced it quite hard. Luckily, as I said, this wasn't just me presenting it to them. I had my team, well, mostly it was my boss, Rob, presenting parts of it, but we had our team backing us behind it. And with a solid foundation of data, a lot of their arguments just got taken away. We're actually starting to prove to them now that a lot of the assumptions they're holding on to are in fact incorrect, and that reality is quite different to what they're seeing. It's a difficult battle, but we're getting there. And people nowadays are a lot faster at going through the grieving cycle.
Excellent. Yes, Alex, I agree. I still find I go through the grieving cycle every time I make my own plan, but I hope I'm faster.
Sometimes every week. So, Alex, there's a question in the chat, and Steve Shook would like to know whether you've applied these practices to other parts of your life, and are there any other examples that you would be willing to share?
This is actually a principle I apply to. Probably the best way to say is just any work I do in my life now. As an example, I am currently working on a project with one of my friends from university. It's an autonomous drone platform. We're trying to make it common to do collision avoidance. And that's currently going through a lot of cycles. There's a lot of learning on that. So I've taken the sort of planning aspect and I've put it into place for not only the project I'm working on, but also the learning exercises I'm doing for it as well. And I'm tracking how well I'm getting through it and when we expect we'll have something that will be able to fly. And we're kind of using that to inform how we're doing a lot of our testing and decision making. I also used it for planning this talk. So I literally do use it as a universal thing. And it was helping me to see that I would get my presentation done in time, even when I was stressing about it.
So I have a question. Early on, you were talking about your data, like the status quo before you started, and you were saying that, the estimates would look good, and then as time went on, the estimates got worse and worse and worse. Was that just because there was a lot of work that was forgotten? Was it because there were quality problems and you were spending more time on rework? What do you attribute that state to?
So what was the true underlying cause of that drive? That's a really interesting question. It's actually a subject of discussion in work at the moment, where as a team, everyone who worked on it is analyzing their own data as well as the team's data as a post-mortem exercise, so we can find what the true cause of it is. My gut feeling right now is that a lot of the cause was based on some of the technical debt we had underlying in the system, and also just on some of the assumptions we took when we went into the program. When we went into the project, we assumed that a lot of areas were working, and the reality was that wasn't actually the case. So it's ongoing work right now, but we're guiding it by data, and we're seeing a lot of benefit from that already. I think we're a few weeks away from actually presenting it to upper management, which will be really exciting. Scary, but exciting.
Okay, we have other comments in the chat, and we'll save those for you, Alex, and send them to you. Any other questions or comments? That feel free to unmute and share your comments with Alex directly.
This is Yoshi, and I have one question. Interesting curve is the through first one that nervous, then that get angry and depressed, and bargaining and accepting, right? In some ways, that can we visualize that changing mode of a team?
Can we visualize a team going through the grieving cycle?
Yeah.
That's a very interesting question. My
Someone-
personal feel on it is actually you can. If I can't remember if I'm quoting the right book, if it's Mythical Man Month or Peopleware, but people go, teams when they form obviously go through the standard forming, storming, performing. I know I'm missing a step out in that.
Norming.
I think, yeah, and I think those steps actually quite quickly mimic the grieving cycle. It's people form a team, you have the initial clashes or disparity that will go on, and eventually once you're all in a solid foundation, you know what you're working on, you know what the unified team goal is, you've hit that acceptance stage, you're in that performing stage. So I think you can visualize it that way. I'm very lucky in that my team is all full of positive people, and so we haven't had to experience that very much.
One more question is, you mentioned that the origin of the trouble project is a gut feeling estimate or decision, right? And as much as you know, how much of a project rely on the gut feeling based estimation or planning or rescheduling?
So how much of the original project was based on that? So
Yeah.
the joys of
Just a second. Okay. Right. Thank you.
So the defense projects obviously run for quite a significant amount of time. And I think there's a lot of lessons learned as you go through them. The initial estimates that were put together for the program were based some on lessons learned, but I think it's one of those ones, as we've gone through it, as the software team has gone through it, and we've stepped not only our abilities, but our understanding up a level about how we view the data and we realize the data, that we've actually started to see where some of the assumptions we made at the start to give us the values fell apart. And obviously, as you go through any project, you get more of an idea, you get a feel for it, and you get a more realistic view on it. I think if you were to ask the software team now to estimate a new project, our response would be much different, and we'd be much closer to the truth. I don't think we'd see these sort of big slips or anywhere near in that sort of scale, just because we're more educated now. We're understanding our own data and we're better at owning it. So yeah, to answer the original question, I think a proportion of that at the start can be attributed to lack of understanding. We were using data in some way, but not to its fullest extent.
Okay, if there's no more questions, I want everybody to join me in thanking Alice. That was a wonderful presentation. We have recorded it. It will be available on our YouTube channel. Thank you.
Thank you very much.